Hello, this is Brooks Whittington with halfwheel.com, and this is the Colibri SV-Cut. This cutter was introduced in 2017 and features a V-cut and a double guillotine cutter in the same vertical case. Now, I've already reviewed this cutter. You can see it on the site, but I want to show it to you to introduce the similar product that Colibri released last year. This is the Quasar SV-Cut. And as you can see, it has very, very similar design when it comes to the cut options that are available. You have the V-cut and the double guillotine cut here. However, this is part of the company's Quasar series. And Quasar series has become one of Colibri's most recognizable product lines. When it was introduced, the first release was a humidor that was made with Daniel Marshall. And each product that has been released since then in the series has been patterned after a unique hobnail pattern design that was originally found on a vintage 1960s Colibri Moultrie lighter. Now, this cutter specifically comes in 7 different colors: black, blue, green, which this is here, gunmetal, navy, and silver, and it has an MSRP of $99 regardless of which color you choose. Now, the V-cut cutter on the top here of the cutter can handle cigars up to 60 ring gauge, while the double guillotine cutter here on the bottom can handle cigars up to 70 ring gauge, a little bit higher in my testing if you just cut a little bit off the cap. The trigger bar is located on the left here when you're looking at it, and it is on a spring, so it springs open and closes very, very nicely, and with a very smooth motion. You just push in and it comes right open. Cutter measures 3.35 inches long, 2.16 inches wide when it's closed like this, and that increases to 3.25 inches when it is fully open like this. It is also 0.67 inches thick. Now, the body of the cutter is made of metal, the blades are made of stainless steel, and the whole cutter weighs a total of 4.8 ounces. All right, enough about all that. Let's cut some cigars. So the process to use this cutter is very similar to any number of other color cutters that you have probably used in the past. And I like to pick it up in my right hand because I'm right-handed. And I open it up by picking on this. I push on the trigger, which is on a spring, so it opens up automatically. I put my fingers in the wells here that are provided nicely by this this design that it has. And then I put my thumb right here on the end in this specific place here when I'm using the V-cut. You open up the cutter, and then I put my cap into the opening, basically push down just a little bit to give it a little bit of pressure, and cut all the way through. And as you can see, very nice cut. Now, when using the double guillotine cut, I actually do the same thing, put the fingers in the same areas. However, I move my thumb to the bottom to give myself more stability. I found that as I was using this, that if I tried to use the double guillotine cutter while having my thumb here, it moved just a little bit more than I liked. So to give myself more stability, I basically hold it like this and put that thumb on that bottom well there, if you will. Open it up, put the cap in, and then you move it around a little bit to make sure you have the exact place where you want it for the cap, and then cut all the way through. All right, now normally in a cigar of mine, I go through a list of really good things and bad things that I didn't necessarily like. This is going to be a little bit different, but I will say that the most important thing that I love about this cutter is the fact that it cuts cigars very, very well. No matter which choice I chose in terms of the blades, whether the V-cut or the straight cut, I had very, very few problems. Some minor issues every once in a while, little pieces of tobacco that are left over. But for the most part, every time I pick up a cigar, I knew that it was going to be cut well. Now, the problems that I have with this cutter, for the most part, are related to one aspect, and that is the back plate that you see here. And a back plate is typically put onto a cutter in order to help newer users, usually, not take off too much of the cap when they're cutting cigars. The back plate is typically put really close to the blades, as you see here, and you just want to cut a little bit off the cap. You don't need that much taken off, typically, if it's well rolled, and so it's not usually that far away from the blades. As you see, if you put this cigar in here, it would take off very, very little, and you don't need to take off that much to get a good draw. And the problems that I have with this cutter are pretty much all related to this back plate. So the first problem I have with the back plate is the fact that if you try to use it as a back plate and put that cigar all the way in there, it's going to take way too much off of the cap, and I've done this, and it definitely took way too much off. Not necessarily with the V-cut, but with the straight cut, it is definitely too far if you push that all the way into there. Now, along with that, there is a problem with visibility when it comes to actually being able to see how much you are cutting off. And so when you put that cigar into there, you can't see the other side. So the problem with a lot of these cutters when it comes to back plates. However, most back plates are quite a bit closer to the blades, so you don't have to necessarily see as much as to get a good cut. This one, absolutely, you have to actually pull it out and make sure that you are cutting only a certain amount before you push those blades together. Now, the second issue I have with the backplate is the fact that because that reservoir is so big inside of there, all of that tobacco gets stuck in there, and with that backplate in place, you can't actually clean it out effectively. You can knock some tobacco out, but you're always going to have some left over. Believe me, I've tried. However, Colibri does give you a very nice way to open this up. As you see here, you just pop that out, and that is relatively clean. Now, the problem is not that they give you a good way to do that. It's actually very nice. The problem is that that is the only way to actually be able to clean the entire thing out. And that is not an issue with a cutter that does not have a back plate, that obviously the pieces just fall right out and you're done with it. This can be used as a very effective cigar arrest, and I used it quite a few times actually while I was testing it. It doesn't matter what size cigar or what ring gauge, it works very, very well. However, I noticed the first time that I actually used it as a cigar rest, I noticed that the paint had been burned off, basically from the heat that was on the foot of the cigar. However, it did actually burn off a little bit of this. Now, this, to Colibri's credit, it didn't actually get worse. I carried it around quite a bit after that, and it never got worse. It was just burned off there from the heat. So, if you're going to use it as a cigar rest, which I did quite a few times, then I would just make sure that this the part that's lit doesn't get anywhere near the actual case itself. One more thing is the fact that the case actually smells quite a bit, not in a good way. Smells, like burnt ashes. After even just a few uses, we noticed it. It doesn't seem to transfer. In other words, if I'm carrying around in my pocket, it doesn't necessarily make my pocket smell like burnt ashes. However, it's a very noticeable smell. And so in the end, after all of that, can I recommend the Colibri Quasar SV-Cutter? The answer is yes, and the reason is pretty simple. It comes down to the cuts, no pun intended. Both of these cutters, no matter which one I chose, no matter what the size of the cigar was, or the vitola, or the ring gauge, I had really, really good results with very few problems, and the problems that I did have were relatively minor in nature. Now, having said that, the issues that I do have with the cutter really come down to one thing, and that is the back plate. I've reviewed a number of similar cutters, for example, the Trident by Cassetti and the Porsche Design, both of which have very similar designs when it comes to how they're laid out and the types of cutters that they offer. And both of these cutters are easier to live with because the visibility is better, the tobacco doesn't get stuck inside, and the cutters are a bit thinner than the Colibri. All of these are advantages because there's no back plate. However, that backplate on the Colibri is really what makes it interesting to me. Very, very visually interesting, and I am willing to put up with those minor annoyances in order to have a really cool looking cutter that cuts cigars very well. You may not be, and if you're not, then there are plenty of other options at around the same price point that can cut cigars just as well. So, that's my opinion. For all of your review and news needs when it comes to premium cigars, go to halfwheel.com.